Hi, good afternoon, all. I'm Dr. Anchal on behalf of Voice of Healthcare. Welcome you all for this panel discussion on World Organ Donation Day, spreading awareness and busting myth. This discussion is organized by Voice of Healthcare. So today we have got our eminent speakers who will be empowering us with their expert insight on the said topics. So without any further delay, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Pallavi Kumar, Executive Director of Mohan Foundation. A very well welcome, ma'am.
Thanks, Anchal.
Then we have got Sunanya Arora Singh, CEO of Organ Receiving and Giving Awareness Network. A very well welcome, ma'am, to this panel discussion. Dr. Vishwanath S., HOD and Consultant Nephrology Transplant Physician, Manipal Hospital. Good afternoon, sir. A very well welcome to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Namaskar.
And we will be joining with Dr. Reshma Tewari, Chief Critical Care Artemis Hospital. She will be leading this session. She will be moderating this session. A very well welcome to you, ma'am, as well.
Thank you, Dr. Anchal. Uh, is Mr. Harish not on board?
Ma'am, actually, we are just trying to reach him out. He is not on the board apparently. I'll just connect with and let you know.
So, should we get going for the afternoon?
Yes, yes.
Uh, while Dr. Anchal has introduced all of us and to all those who may be listening to us, I would be happy to just make a short welcome myself. Dr. Vishwanath, Pallavi, Ms. Sunena. Pallavi, of course, I've known many years now and associated with this arena and this zone that we are going to talk about today. But it is really my privilege to get to know you today, Sunena and Dr. Vishwanath, and I think Mr. Harish Manian when he joins us.
Thank you.
So we are having this panel discussion today on the occasion of World Organ Donation Day, and Voice of Healthcare is carrying forward a discussion which is to spread awareness and burst myths related to organ donation. I think having been in the critical care zone for about 25 years now in my country and working in the National Capital Region, I can comfortably state that while, of course, the live donor kidneys, etc., have been happening for many years prior to what I would say, but getting to the brain dead and trying to harvest multiple organs to save many lives picked up pace only about 10 to 12 years ago, somewhat. We still have a huge gap in terms of the demand versus supply. And while we were catching up, particularly the North Zone in context of the South, which is doing way better, I think the COVID pandemic also put us back by the many years of hard work or wherever we had reached. I do hope that while we leave the pandemic behind us, and I say this as we are hearing the numbers are rising, but as we leave the pandemic behind us, I trust that we will soon, get back and at least start moving forward from where we were 2 years ago. Welcome, Dr. Manian. You have joined us now. If I may start with a question to you, Pallavi, whom I have known to be working in this field for the last, at least I think 10, 12 years or maybe more, Pallavi, you can enlighten us. What would you say is the current status and the scenario of organ donation transplantation in India? Do you feel we have progressed over the last few years? And I mean, where exactly are we now, Pallavi?
So, if you look back, and if you don't look back at the COVID pandemic time, there has been an upward rise in the number of donations that have been happening each year. In fact, there has been a fourfold increase. Unfortunately, the increase is not as much as it should be to cater to the demand supply gap that you mentioned earlier. So while we are doing well, we continue to not meet our own internal demands. We continue to be one of the countries that are pretty low down in the organ donation statistics if you look at the worldwide statistics. Uh, we are doing much better in living transplantation, in fact, leading in kidney transplants in the world. But I think we really need to work more towards a disease donation statistics. Yeah.
So, do you feel we might just hit the right trajectory? What is the kind of number you may want us to achieve over the next 2 years, Pallavi?
So there, I mean, one is not never really clear about what the organ donation rate is, but it's about zero 0.8 per million population. And for the viewers, I just wanted to help them understand what that means. So it's number of donations in a million people, in 10 lakh people, how many people who actually go out and donate, not just pledge. So India is supposed to be at about zero 0.8, 0.6. I don't know, it keeps varying. But the long and short of it is that not even a single person in a million people goes on to become a donor in our country. I think if we kind of achieve an organ donation rate of about 2 or 3 per million population, we should be doing well, Reshma.
Thank you, Pallavi. So I'd like to take this forward with you, Sunena. Because you yourself are the CEO of an NGO that is working on this organ, from what I know. So, Sunena, would you like to enlighten us on what may be the different kinds and categories of organ donation programs that are active in our country as of now?
By that, you mean what, the programs to make people aware of organ donation?
Yeah, I think all of it, everything that is working towards creating, this.
Right. So, I mean, there are a lot of NGOs in India who are doing a lot of work. Many of them, like MOHAN Foundation, is national, of course, they're everywhere. But a lot of them are in their various states and work closely in that state and do a great job. So, what NGOs do is like what we do and what several others do is they go to schools, they have school programs running. They make the children aware of organ donation. So now, if today, if all children are made aware of organ donation through schools, through even chapters in their books, notebooks, in another 10 years, you won't need to be trying to raise so much awareness on organ donation because all of them will already know it, right? Then there are programs that are running with hospitals, with maybe hospitals in tier 2, tier 3 cities, where there's no awareness even amongst the medical community. So there are no retrieval centers. There is no declaration of brain death over there. So that is another thing that we are trying to do, especially in Haryana, in 3 or 4 districts, is to make the local hospitals into retrieval centers. So they get their brain death committees. They are able to recognize if somebody is brain dead. They are able to declare that death and then do the retrieval and send the organ to a transplant center where it can be transplanted. Plus, apart from that, of course, there are social media awareness campaigns, lots of them. Tying up with corporates is a very good way of raising awareness amongst the public. We do a lot of radio. So radio programming is something that we started 2-3 years ago, and it has worked really, really well because in one radio show of say 10 to 15 to 20 minutes, you can reach lakhs and lakhs of people. And if you keep up the programming, then more and more people become aware of it. So these are the kind of tools that one has to use. But having said that, I think the government needs to come up with a big mass awareness campaign that they do, like Swachh Bharat, or they do whatever else, other campaigns, which are on a massive scale. Only then one can assume that in a few years we will have, like Pallavi said, the organ donation rate rising. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 1 year or 2 years. So those are the kind of activities that are happening. Each NGO is doing different things in various places. Some NGOs are involved in the actual counseling, like MOHAN Foundation is. There's several in Gujarat who are involved in actual counseling because people are more. In fact, today there was a discussion earlier, and this particular recipient said that when he was at a hospital, there was a woman he was a liver transplant recipient. So he went to her and she said, what are you doing here? So he said, I'm a liver recipient. So she said, okay, I'm just going to meet the doctor. Then she came back, she sought him out and said that I still don't understand, tell me, what is it about? So people are even after they're going to hospitals, they're not really, understanding what is going on, and they need somebody else to talk to them, and therefore NGOs also play a big role in that. And so do actual other recipients who can come and help NGOs.
So, Sunena, how do you think the government has fared so far in terms of, setting up NOTO, dividing it into the ROTOs and the zonals, etc.? Do you think that has helped or I mean, there's a lot lacking there too, even today.
No, now that's a very good thing that they are now rotos and sotos, because then now those all those organizations are taking the onus in that particular state. So it is very, very good that this system has been put in place. And a lot of the sotos are doing a really good job. Like today, there was one in a big program in Karnataka done by the Jeevan Sarthakate over there, which was quite a big program. Very nice. I've seen the videos and the photographs. Very nicely done. So, but maybe more of the Sotos can do more going forward, learn from each other. Yeah. Otherwise, the
I think
separation of Sotos
everybody,
and all is a good thing.
yes, but I think they just need to get more into it to, take it forward further. So with this, Mr. Manian, you have just joined us, and you are heading a healthcare organization, or rather MGM Healthcare, should I say. So from the managerial aspects, what do you think is the ideal technology and other infrastructure frameworks that may be required by healthcare organizations and hospitals so that organ donation may become less effort and thing demanding and kind of more seamless with other organizations around us? Mr. Harish Manyan.
Very good afternoon, and thanks for having me as part of this elite panel. I'm sorry to join you late because I just messed up with the connection. Extremely sorry for that. Just to set the context, Reshma, ma'am, I think nobody can understand the pain of organ donation more than our hospital or our institute today, because we run our largest, cardiac heart and lung transplant program based out of this country, and this is probably the third largest program in the world, what we run today. We do almost like 10 to 12 heart and lung transplants in a given month. So the donation becomes very critical for us because our listing is so huge at this stage. We actually depend on deceased donors for organ retrieval. Sad part is that I think even now, after almost a decade of intense awareness by the government and other respective authorities across India, still it is yet to catch up. Actually, I think India should move to opt-out option like Sweden and other countries in Europe, where by birth you become mandatory organ donors, which is still not the case in India. But I think there are, our system is like that, which will take a little more time to adapt to this kind of, I would say, revolutionary methodology of organ donation across country. Having said that, I think the new way, I think which I think everybody should look up to is whether we can think about DCD transplants and DCD organ donations within our country, and the framework has to be created. I think which most of the European countries have adapted to, and this actually intensifies or increases the availability of organs across country. So usually what we do is a disease donor transplant or disease donor organ retrieval is what is happening in India. But I think circulatory death is the way forward, according to me, where I think we do a lot of possibilities within an organization. If you see across the mortality rate in all private hospitals and government hospitals, in an eligible criteria, you will see at least 4% of mortality happening at circulatory death. Actually. So in that, if you are able to retrieve at least say 5 to 10% out of that, also it can suffice a lot of things which can be taken care for patients who are waiting endlessly for, especially in the category of I would say liver and kidney, which is a huge burden on the Indian organ, I would say, donation system. And still there are states which are picking up, I would say. I think there is a silver lining which is happening is in Gujarat. I think a lot of donations happen in Gujarat nowadays, which was actually going behind the schedule. I think to my surprise, I was exactly in 2014 when I was in one of the channels talking about organ donation. At that point in time, Tamil Nadu used to be the number one state which used to have the maximum number of donations in India at that point in time, followed by Karnataka and Andhra Telangana at that point in time. Now today, Tamil Nadu stands, I think, number 4 or something in the overall list, whereas Telangana has taken over, Maharashtra has taken over, and that point in time, 2014, Maharashtra had 14 transplant licenses issued to all the hospitals, and there was no donation, there was no transplant happening there. Today, Maharashtra is one of the leading organ donation states, I think, along with Telangana, Gujarat, and I think, Maharashtra, Telangana, Gujarat. I think that is then followed by Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and so on and so forth. So I think the shift is happening. A lot of people need to catch up. I think the dynamics have to change over a period of time. And technology is, as you mentioned, ma'am, I think very important part is that, like what we are doing, transparency and organ allocation has to improve dramatically in the country. Today, I think the biggest challenge for an organ allocation in the country is that you have a very tiered and layered system across country. If state has to reject, then it has goes to zone. Zone has to reject, then it has to go to nation. Then that is allocation happens. And in certain cases, what happens is because of this lag, and perpetually, if you see, ma'am, I think none of these portals work well in Indian context today. If you have to upload an information, it takes time. The declaration form, it takes time. So, a app-based single system, single window system has to come into play, where a donation happens, organ allocation based on approval, based on priority, and the people who are listed in that should be given. I think that system will actually be better compared to a zone-wise allocation of organs. Of course, it has got its own merit. I think in some cases we lose out almost like 25 to 30% of organ retrieval process in India because of this zone-wise allocation. Because by the time the zones gets alerted, it goes from one zone to other, it covers entire India and comes back to the person who's really deserving. By the time the family actually majority of the time withdraws consent because it's going to take one more extra day. So there are challenges. I think IT can solve it a big time in terms of single window operation of organ allocation in India. I think that's my 2 cents on this.
Yes, I think I completely agree with you because seamless communication, etc., can happen only when IT really comes in a big way into this. And I think it's people like you who have to perhaps take those things forward. But having said that, as you said that the South was of course always ahead, but now Gujarat has fast caught up and overtaken perhaps. So, what do you think they did differently, to be able to do this? That the north of India and certain other parts of India are not being able to catch up in the same way. What do you think you have done differently, or what did you have that we do not have in order to take it forward?
Is that question to me, ma'am?
Yes, Mr. Harish.
Okay. Ma'am, I think, Bombay, I would say Maharashtra and Gujarat has taken, at a state level, the initiatives have been much more intense. Even Telangana, as a matter of fact, there is, by the, I think in Telangana it is known as Jivan Dan or something, right? And Jivan Dan is very hyperactive, to be more precise. I think the team, actually the state's results in terms of organ donation is dependent by the state body which runs it actually. And Jivan Dan and the body which is sitting in Gujarat is hyperactive. They do activities and initiatives throughout the year. And some states, though this body exists, but they do on the day of organ donation and nothing else. So what happens is, it's the intent of the body to create more awareness and get people aligned with doing this particular initiative. So it's I would say Tamil Nadu also got lagged behind because of this reason, according to me. I think now they are catching up. Now it's a state level initiative. The CM is getting into it, the health minister getting into it, want to create more awareness about health. So I think if the body and the private and public partnership happens well, and there is intense awareness on this, I think people will do come forward. And I think that's what I've seen in these couple of states and how things have progressed from where it was.
Yes, and I do hope, that each of us is able to do better than the previous. And as Pallavi and Sunanya mentioned earlier, that maybe the government needs to take it up the way it did with Swasth Bharat and, that Sarvekshan and all those kind of things. So moving to a little bit of the clinical side of organ donation, I'm very happy that we have with us Dr. Vishwanath, who's the head of nephrology at Manipal Hospital in Delhi, and he's also a transplant physician himself. Dr. Vishwanath, can you throw some light on the myths and misinformation that may be associated with organ donation, particularly like when we are talking about, a patient being brain dead or a person, whether it's a natural death or it's not a natural death? Dr. Vishwanath.
Basically, many people are not aware that something like this brain death is there. Most of the people think like what Manian said, they want circulatory death. So that is one caveat where we have people are not coming forward for donation. They feel brain death itself may not be the complete death. But medically, we know that brain death is the one which gives us whether the death has happened or not. And first of all, we as a society has to accept that brain death is an irreversible damage to the brain. And if they can consider donating, that's the best time to probably donate and save somebody else's life. And many times what happens is there is a lot of misinformation going around saying that once they say that they want to donate, people may not care and things like that, which is not true. In medical field, if you look at as a doctor, I would like to save the life. Last thing comes is donation, brain death, and all those things. So we are all bound by our ethics, where we want to save the life rather than thinking of other things. So that's what people think once they declare that they may not get good care and things like that, which is not very much true. And in fact, I think one of the speaker, Pallavi, spoke about saying to start educating in the school. So probably once we start putting that in their mind, say that this is what is brain death, this is what is irreversible damage, where you can actually do good to the other people, the seeds will be sown where you can actually see the effect maybe after 5 years, 10 years, when they are older, and then they can take a collective decision. So we should, as a media and as people who have access to other forms of social media, we should educate people saying what is brain death, what is brain death donation, what is organ donation. First of all, cadaver itself, many people won't know at all. Even in fact, we have seen people who come to us with renal failure, with organ failure, they don't know that something like cadaver is available. So we have to tell them that there is something like this, you register yourself, when it is available you will get the organ. So the problem is most of the times there is a lot of misinformation of saying they can get donor from outside, they can get some live donor from outside, which is not actually legally possible in our country. So the only way forward is we are having very less live donors. More and more we are becoming nuclear families. So the only way forward is to have more brain deaths and cadaver donation. In fact, as Pallavi mentioned, our donation cadavers are very, very less. So even if we have increased by 1 per million, it can actually substantially increase our cadaver donation. And many of the states have taken over. In fact, now Gujarat is number 1. So probably we should educate more people, educating and then telling them this is what is brain death, this is what you can do, and then you can actually save other people's life. So that's where we can probably make a difference.
Yes, indeed. I think, Dr. Vishwanath, the most important is that a particular patient or the family actually, not the patient,
Yes.
should be aware about the concept and the idea before they actually have a patient at their hands.
Absolutely.
Rather than hearing about it for the first time when they have a loved one who is, being called brain dead. Have you in your practice, and I may want Sunena also to come in on this, encountered that our cultural and or any cultural or religious beliefs may be coming in the way for people to take a decision on this?
Not much. If you look at our culture, though it may be Hindu, even Buddhism, donating organ is the highest sacrifice you can make. Even if you look at scriptures, donating organs, many scriptures have shown people have donated liver. And even if you look at our own Ganesha, who is actually considered as god of transplant. So if you look at the idealistic, he is a xenotransplant. So probably it is there in the cultures. We need to ingrain this into their minds. And I don't think there is any culture against organ donation. So Sunena may correct if I'm wrong, but donating an organ is considered as the highest sacrifice in any religion and any sect. So probably that actually can make people aware that this is something which they can have the sacrifice and probably live on later. Yes. Sunena, anything?
Yeah, Sunena,
Yes.
can you shed some
So,
light?
yes, so whenever we go somewhere, we have a talk or whatever it is, it's not really the religious or the cultural aspect that is the problem. It's just that people don't know any better. They don't understand what it is. They don't understand how is it going to happen. They don't understand why it's going to take so long. They don't understand why the family decides and why don't they decide, because in India, as you know, the law is that the family will take the final decision. So it's not, at least I don't find that religion plays a big role in any of the questions or any of the hesitations that people have. It's more to do with the fact that they just don't know anything about it, right? It's
That
new to
is
them.
indeed,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that's indeed heartening because then it boils down to awareness, awareness, and awareness, I guess, you know. Dr. Vishwanath, can you just tell us for, you know, everybody's information, how long are the organs viable? How soon should they be retrieved and they can be transplanted? You know, what may be the kind of people who can be donors and who may be those who cannot donate? Just for from a very general perspective for the people in the country.
In general, the minute the brain death is declared, people maintain the donor so that the organs don't get damaged. Most of the times, it happens few hours to few days. There are a lot of studies where they have seen, in fact, they have maintained the donor for a week as well. In fact, many there are few studies where they have maintained the donor for 2 weeks. But most of the times, by the time we declare it is brain death, the patient may be donor, may be critical. They'll be already on some BP medications to maintain the blood pressure, what we call as inotropes. Once we declare brain death, we will not be able to maintain for very long. For few days at least, yes, but not very long. Few hours. Best would be 24 to 48 hours if it can be, if the family can be convinced and donation happens quickly. If by all other parameters the donor is stable, they can be maintained for few more days. But most of the studies have shown that it has to be done within few days. It is very difficult to define this number of days, but because as the number of days progresses, the donor's condition may deteriorate and they may become unfit for donation. That's the reason it is very crucial that we need to take a decision quickly and harvest the organs. That is the first part of your question. Second part, what you asked was who is fit and who is not fit. By and large, most of the donors are fit to donate. In general, anybody between 5 years to 65 years can donate all the organs. Few organs can be donated at extremes of age. In fact, we had one young donor as young as 5 years who had donated organs. They had put what is called as dual organs. Both the organs were given to the one recipient. And in fact, we had started one trust in the name of the parent's child who had donated, and we have what is called as Hall of Fame in our hospital, where whoever donates, their names will be mentioned, and it is like giving honor to them and rightly giving honor to them and recognizing their service and what they have donated to the society. And in fact, that is the very grief moment where it is very difficult to decide by the family and especially for the parents in a child. So it will be actually a highest sacrifice they can make. So any age across they can donate. It depends on what organs we are looking at. In general, 5 to 65 years, up to 70 years also, people do take the organs. Manian, anything is there? You can.
So indeed the message Dr. Vishwanath is giving us that, you know, almost everybody, almost each one of us can be a donor at some
Absolutely.
point or the other. It is just that we need to know about it and to be able to take the action at the right time. Coming back to you, Pallavi, so while we've understood what things may be like now, what are the kind of policy interventions that may correct these gaps and then create a far more robust organ donation ecosystem in our country than we have at this moment?
So I think for me, it all comes down to the will of the hospital, the will of the management, the will of the government, will of the people involved. So we all know we have an act in place, the Transplantation of Human Organs Act. This so for people who don't want to support the whole certification and declaration of brain death will find faults with the act. The foundation has the opportunity to work with various hospitals and various ICUs. Why is it that certain hospitals do well? Why is it that certain ICUs do well? It's because there is a will in certain places. So, Reshma, I worked very closely with you, and you are governed by the same act that a particular hospital, maybe 20 kilometers away from you, is governed by. Same problems of the act not saying that you can take off the ventilator. However, the act very clearly telling you how to declare brain death. So I think it's it's to do with what kind of relationships the team at the critical care unit has established with the family? What kind of partnership have they created with that family? Have they taken the trouble to give information at regular intervals? Have they kept them informed of the patient's situation and the fact that the condition is deteriorating? When the family feels that this treating team has been a partner to me in this entire process, then they feel partners even in that whole letting go process and subsequently the conversation around organ donation. A lot of emphasis is placed on that last conversation with the family, when the counselor or a transplant coordinator comes in and starts speaking to the family about organ donation, and a lot of emphasis is placed on that. However, a lot of good or bad has already happened from the time the families entered the hospital till the time this organ donation conversation happened. So I think if the government is willing, like what Harish was saying, why are certain states doing well? Health is a state subject, as we all know. Why are certain states doing well or are beginning to do well? It's because the state authorities are now putting their might behind this whole issue and saying, we will treat this seriously. We will do all that is needed to make it happen. We have now begun work in Manipur. Northeast, as you know, has zero work happening. Nobody knew what was doing. Now we are working with the stakeholders there. We have started creating awareness. We have started creating policies there. It's the same law. Within a matter of 1 year, we have just done our sixth transplant in the government hospital there, and soon we will start doing the disease donation program. So I think it's all about bringing a certain degree of passion into this whole process. I mean, that is something that I don't think can be undermined, and putting less onus on the public and putting more onus on the systems, is what is needed. Public is fairly intelligent. Like Sunanya said, nobody is saying, if I give my organs this birth, I'll be born blind. The number of families that you and I have sat in counsel together, Reshma, not one person did they ever bring up religion as a say no. They are more interested in knowing who will get the organs, what kind of transparency is in that process. Will it happen in a time that I can plan for my end rights tomorrow for my family? They want to know who's getting. So they want to know the hospital is not making money out of it. The idea is that your systems are streamlined, not creating panic for the family. That is really what is needed.
So certainly, I think maybe hospitals need more robust policies to be able to try and implement a program rather than it being, more of, okay, ye karna, wo dekh lena. It has to go beyond that. But do you think at the state level, our country needs a law? I mean, maybe as tough as just having an exit out option or otherwise being a donor, by default. Do you think our nation is prepared or ready or something like that
I
would be
don't think,
appropriate for
with
us?
respect to Dr. Vishwanath or Harish or whoever said that, I don't think we are, as a country, are ready to get into an opt-out system. We are an emotional country. We are a very, family-driven kind of a country, and I don't think we have, as a country, we have done enough to create systems in terms of awareness, in terms of hospital-based policies, in terms of retrieval, all of that, to impose this upon our people. No, that happens in countries that is taking care of its citizens' healthcare needs, and have done enough to create a very positive understanding around organ donation. It would be premature in our country. I sometimes think maybe we could look at experimenting with certain states on making eye donation an opt-out, and see how the public reacts to that. But we're definitely not ready for. We can't even make donations happen. A family comes into a hospital and perhaps they have a death. Half the time the family does not even come to know if it's a brain death. The other half, nobody's asking them. So our own systems, our infrastructures are not in place to take something so dramatic and no. I personally
Yes, I think perhaps most of us on the panel would perhaps agree with you. But maybe we are a nation who likes to be told, do this, and then we perhaps, like good school children, we often do it. While if it is left to us, we kind of hope that somebody else will just take it forward for us. But certainly, organizations like yours and Sunanya here with us, your NGOs are playing a very big role because we have discussed and what we have concluded so far that it's all about awareness, awareness, and awareness. So, Sunanya, can you share with all of us here about some initiatives that you may have taken, in this context and which you feel that, yes, those are the kind of things which help and which will certainly take the program forward?
Yeah, so earlier, like I said, the school initiatives, the radio, all those are very, very, great. The latest thing we are doing is, so I don't know if everybody knows, but every 2 years, there is a global event called the World Transplant Games. It's like Paralympics, but it's for transplanted patients and for living donors. And this has been going on for 40 years. India has participated in the last four games. The first two was where individuals went on their own and they won gold medals and silver medals, and nobody knew about it. In 2019, a 14 member contingent went and they won seven medals, four golds and three silver. Still, I mean, when they came back, there was no real, media frenzy or anything to, nobody was running up to them and awarding them or anything. So, what we have done this time is that we have become the team managers from India, and we have the next games are in Perth, Australia in 2023 in April. And so far, we have around 70 people who want to go. So these are heart transplant recipients, not lungs, liver and kidney. And they have registered with us. We recently had a training camp in Manavachna University in Faridabad for the badminton and the football players. And it has generated so much excitement and so much good press. And now today, the Times of India has started a campaign. So they are going to be featuring all the World Transplant Game patients. And these are really great stories, because here you have people who were on their deathbed and now are living perfectly fit, nice, good lives. So it's one, it takes away the fear of transplant patients and what's going to happen to us after transplant. And two, it inspires so many other millions of people that, wow, after donation you can actually gift a life to a person, and he looks perfectly, he's going to be perfectly fine, and not only that, he's going to play for India and win medals for India. So these are the kind of things we need to do, so that there more and more people and millions of people get inspired to do it. The thing is to inspire everyone, not just to give them information that this is organ donation and you can save 8 lives and all. That everybody does, but you have to do something to inspire somebody else. That, do I really want to be a part of this? Yeah, I do. This is so great. So these are the kind of projects that we like to do, where it's something more inspirational rather than just giving out information, which also happens, of course. And like I said,
Uh, Yeah, Sunena. In fact, so I heard about these World Transplant Games only today when I was like just looking up some things before coming onto this this webinar we are having right now, and it was very very exciting to note how you people are taking this forward. I think this is a awesome communication for both awareness and inspiration, motivation, everything. It's just everything in the nutshell together.
yeah.
Would you clarify to us whether these World Transplant Games are only for recipients
No.
or also for the donors who have,
Yeah.
given a part of their liver or
Right.
a
It's
kidney
for
or?
both. So the majority of the games are for recipients, but there are some games for living donors. So there's 5 games for living donors. So athletics, they can do athletics. They can do five other sports. But the majority of the sports, like badminton and football and swimming, I think, and the host of other games, they are all for recipients, because at some level it's unfair to pit a donor against a recipient, right? You can't expect a recipient who's had a heart transplant to perform at the same level as a donor. Most of the sports are for recipients. But having said that, in the last games, the 3 gold medals came from living donors. So we won long jump, we won ball throw, and we won golf. Although golf was a recipient, but so these are all games. We
Excellent.
won a silver in badminton, we won a silver in squash, and these are all games that are the most popular games, right? And as you can imagine, the teams from the other countries come fully prepared with full coaching and with all their physiotherapists and their lots of training and whatever. And our the badminton player, he told us that for the final, I just came and I was standing alone, and then there was the opposition. The guy who was opposite him had all his coaches around him. He had the physiotherapist. They were playing mind games with him, and so we need to take a well trained, and we have really really good players, very fit players, and we have already started training them up. And so hopefully this time we'll take around 45 players and go to Perth.
I'm sure this is going to go a long way, Sunena. Kudos to this initiative. Dr. Vishwanath, so you just heard about these recipients, donors going out there and participating in World Games. which just go to show how they can come back to leading such good, healthy, participative lives after undergoing a transplant or being a donor. So while we hear that, Dr. Vishwanath, can you share with me that what are the bottlenecks and hurdles that you face towards your patient who is a would-be recipient, in terms of him actually reaching there, both for the children and the adult patients, who are waiting for an organ? What are the kind of bottlenecks they face to become a participant in the World Transplant Games?
First of all, is as Sunanya said, they are not aware. Many people are not aware that something like this games is there. In fact, we had conducted one in Karnataka pre-COVID, and we had to send out information to everyone, coax them to come and participate. So many people may not be aware. Problem is suddenly you cannot call today and ask them to come and participate tomorrow. They will need training. They need to get ready for that. You cannot just come and participate in any running or be it even a simple indoor game. So we need to create awareness among them, and also that will be the best platform to interact with each other. So when we do transplant games, when we show them that all these things we can participate. In fact, we had a cricket match where donors and recipients were in the opposite team. So it is something to motivate people, and basically we can also show the world that recipients after having a transplant, they're leading a near normal life. So this is one way to show the world that they can lead a normal life, they can have family life, they can continue with their life, and quality of life will be much better. And that way we can actually motivate more people to come forward to donate and give their consent. And in fact, they have to honor their donor's consent, saying that okay, my donor had given consent to donate his organs, and please go ahead and take the organs in the unfortunate event of a brain death. So these are all complete to motivate people, and in fact awareness is not there. In fact, I had to tell one of our patients that there is something called transplant game which happens internationally, and this recipient, in fact, whom we had done transplant, she was in Germany. So in fact, she was not even aware that something like this is available. So maybe we should start educating right from physicians, patients, and even the coordinators, where we can actually start telling them that this is something which we can look forward after you have a transplant. So it is something to motivate people to take part in, definitely.
Yes, indeed, Dr. Vishwanath. I think, the idea is that a person who is sick gets an organ in time, heals well after his transplant, and then goes on to lead a constructive life, including participating in games. Uh, and somewhere, I think, yes, there is that bottom line person who is the intensivist in an ICU, who has to identify this brain dead person at the right time, maintain the right communication all through the admission, as Pallavi mentioned, so that we can have the right conversation at the right moment and hope for a positive response. So, going with this, Pallavi, can I ask you to share with us what are the bottlenecks? I mean, are we really terrible at grief counseling without a counselor at hand? And even if we have a counselor, are they really trained enough to be able to cope comfortably if the physician or the critical care or the primary is not being able to handle it in the same way? The counselors that we have, are they also really trained enough to take it forward? How do you see us there at the ICU level, where we have that brain dead on the bed and we don't know how to translate it into a actual donation?
At least you're asking me that there's a brain dead on the death and you're talking about counseling. Our problem begins much earlier. Most hospitals are not identifying brain deaths. Most hospitals are not declaring brain deaths. And that's what we tell the hospitals that we work with. Just do the declaration. Let's have this conversation with the family. Let it be a no. It's all right. Let's get into the habit of, at least approaching and we have to get out of this whole mindset that we have to get organs for transplants, for recipients. I strongly believe that every family has a right to be given this option. It is that family's right to be asked whether they want to donate their loved ones' organs or not. So it begins from there, the right of the family to be asked, and of course, the fact that there are recipients who will benefit with that decision. So I think you earlier said something about, as a country, we have people who like to be told what to do. So I think if we really need to do that, We need to have the governments do a brain death audit. Every hospital should compulsorily be made to declare, to submit reports of how many brain deaths did they have, how many did they certify, why did they not certify the ones that they did not certify, so that has to happen, because right now we are losing a whole pool of potential donors because brain deaths simply do not get identified, leave alone certified. Then comes the next part of um, counseling. This is something again I touched upon earlier. Why does a family say yes? There are a million factors that go into why a family says yes or no, and perhaps the counseling comes pretty later in the day. Like I said, a lot of good or damage. So there's this family that comes with its own preconceived notions, their whole awareness of organ donation, their relationship with the person who has died, the kind of grief they are experiencing, their relationship with the hospital since they walked into the emergency room. All of these factors play a role. So everywhere care has to be given. So while organizations like us and Organ India are creating awareness outside, creating a dialogue on organ donation, hospitals internally have to be very, very sensitized to what are they going to do with this family the moment it enters into our premise, any trauma case. And the fact that there's a clear directive from the management that every brain death will be identified. We work with hospitals, and I've had doctors telling me, ये नहीं family हाँ नहीं बोलेगी, don't waste your time here. We cannot make these assumptions. We have to put in 100%. I always tell our transplant coordinators in a training, it is a yes till you get a no. Do not assume a no. Do everything that you can in your power to get that yes happen. If it doesn't happen, it's fine. It's that family. It's their own unique experience with what you said, with grief, with organ donation, with everything else. But just the practice of making sure that each brain death is identified, certified, and that we speak to every family that has a brain death that happened.
So yes, and when it comes to identification and the patient is in the ICU, it is the intensivist who should perhaps take the onus of identifying each of these patients and then ensuring that the grief counseling and then the donation counseling at least takes place. Whatever it may materialize into eventually is a secondary matter. So do you feel that the training of, the intensivists in every ICU of the country is adequate on this front?
No, it's not adequate at all. And critical care intensivists are not very good at talking about death. They're not sometimes very good at having these emotional conversations. So I've seen sitting with critical care people pussyfooting against using the word death, using a language that says that your person has died, in all which ways. It's not brain death, some reflexes, no scope of getting saved, will not survive. So the kind of language our intensivists are going to be using with these families becomes so much more important. Just the whole comfort with breaking the news of death and talking about death, that needs to be apart from the clinical training. I'm talking about softer skills. So of course there has to be training on identifying brain death and declaring brain death, and understanding what the law says, and of course the whole gamut of maintenance. But I am also very much interested in this whole softer skill, of being able to talk about death, of being able to convey death in very no uncertain terms. As you know that we have done that film together, Reshma, which it essentially talks about this, where how do we not leave any scope of confusion with the family, and let them know that their loved one has died. However, in this situation, they have an option that could enable something positive to come out of their grief.
Yes, Pallavi, and as an intensivist, I can just share with you, in terms of training, identifying the brain dead as a theoretical scientific question is now a very, very important chapter in the training of intensive care. So I think every young intensivist stepping out now after their, degree would well be aware of this, because they know it's one of the important questions that you may well be asked in your exam. Along with that, I would also like to share with you that, in the examination during the Viva, we have a section now which gives a few marks on how you're going to counsel a patient. So a scenario is created where, this is the situation and now you tell me. So often in this, we do create a scenario about a brain dead also, while we are also talking about other scenarios. So So these things have been introduced lately, and I do hope they'll go a long way in eventually creating, intensivists who will be able to discuss these things more openly. Because as you said, the emphasis on development of these soft skills, we haven't really had it from our undergrad days. If you look at the large population of medical graduates who come out each year, but hopefully, I'm sure you'll be happy to hear this that we may just become better with time.
I am happy to hear that.
Uh, I come back to the manager among us, Mr. Harish Manian, again, as we are heading to a close, So, in the end, everything is in the hands of the management. It may be of the institution or of the country, as the nation as a whole. What does the future of organ donation look like to you, Harish Manian?
Ma'am, I think it's very bright. I would say that in a very nutshell, but I would say there is a long way to go. The journey has just started, according to me. There is a lot of catch up we have to do. I think from a point of view from a tech platform, for these platforms to work properly, to patient counseling to make it more seamless, government intervention to ensure there is enough support provided and becomes easy for the families who are in grief and they want to donate, it becomes easier. I think there is a long way to go. I think as Pallavi was saying just now, there are states in India, ma'am. There are no brain death committee itself, and we are expecting them to start donating. It's too much of an ask at this stage. As close as Pondicherry next to Tamil Nadu doesn't have an organ, what you call a brain death committee still established. So there are so many things has to be done in the country at the grassroots level. So it takes long time. I think some states have advanced. I think they should actually bridge together and form a consortium where these advanced states should actually support the ones which you want to get some help in terms to get a jump start there. I think one more point which I would like to bring up is that governments can put effort in terms of supporting some high-end technology for bringing organ viability into play. I think Dr. Vishwanath just now mentioned about donation of organs and viability of the organ as far as from the donor's point of view. But the organ viability is a very crucial aspect. If you see in India, nightmare is I think the organ logistics is a nightmare. We are the largest in terms of operating commercial airlines to transfer organs. We are presented in US actually in terms as a paper of 100, 200 plus organs being shifted using commercial airlines in the history of the world, which is only done by our team. The reason is that I think people can't afford any logistic, cost of charter flights in India because it's prohibitively expensive to move it. And if you want to keep an organ viable today, I think every organ has got a viability. I think Dr. Vishwanath will agree with me. Heart and lung has got a 4 to 5 hour window. Liver and kidney can go up to almost like 10 to 12 hours. But with a very short window period of 4 to 5 hours for an organ like heart and lung, it is a logistic nightmare in terms of shifting an organ from one location to other. We have shifted an organ from Chandigarh to Chennai. It's a nightmare to say the least. I think everybody is in the hooks. Nobody sleeps, just trying to figure out that next flight is caught properly because the patient can't afford a charter flight. So there has to be an intervention in terms of last mile connectivity from the government. There are organ care systems which can improve the viability of these marginal organs, and also short life organs can go up to almost 12 hours. But no hospital can afford to invest because the product itself costs almost 5 crores actually, and the solution costs almost 40 lakhs per transplant. So if government comes and places 4 organ care systems across the country, and the product can be by, I would say, can be subsidized by the private as well as any other agency like NGOs, I think that we can improve the acceptance of organ across India. A lot of organs today are rejected or are refused by capable organizations purely because of logistics. I think we have a separate topic on that. But I would say it's a way forward. I always see the greener part of it. I've seen this program coming through in the last 10, 15 years, a big way. We have moved ahead from doing just 150 to 200 donation to almost like 1,000 donations now. It'll go forward. I'm sure we are on the right path and we'll do much, much better as the days come.
Yeah, Mr. Manian, because, we have our strength being 1.4 billion, but that often becomes a roadblock too. But as you said, that since a lot has happened over the last 10 to 15 years, I'm sure a lot will happen as we go forward. So I would like to end by asking each of the panelists here, a little catchphrase or take-home message that you may want to give? A short 30 seconds. Dr. Vishwanath, please.
We should probably create more and more awareness, and then definitely, as you said, we need to have more counselors who can educate people, and we should create more and more media awareness, especially once the seed is sown in the mind, saying this is something which is noble, this is something which can save lives, this is something which helps other lives, and then no need to burn the organs or bury the organs. Definitely, more and more people will come forward, and we can also probably try to catch up with Spain, as Manian mentioned.
Thank you, Dr. Vishwanath. So, Naina.
Yeah, I think we should, of course, do awareness, but that is happening in any case. I just wish that the government would do a mass awareness campaign and also help NGOs who are doing a lot of work throughout the country with whatever they can. And people should just come out and know more about organ donation, get inspired by all these fantastic stories that are, in the media. They only have to go online to check what all is going on. And please support our athletes who are going to the World Transplant Games.
Thank you. Pallavi.
I think my message would be to the listeners that don't think it's someone else's problem. It is happening to someone else. Tomorrow it could be your family, someone in your office setup. It could be you. So start looking at organ failure as something that's very close to us, and that each one of us has to rise up to the occasion, and I'm just reminded of something Rahul Bose said in one of our campaigns. He had come in as a brand ambassador. He's saying when you have to do something good, either you're expected to give something out of your resources, so money or whatever, your old clothes or whatever, or you have to give your time, or efforts. This is a no-brainer. You're doing good. You're actually saving lives out of something that you don't need. You're gone. You don't need it anymore. And it's not just saving lives. It's saving families. It's reforming families. So we really have to start looking at it from that perspective.
Mr. Harish Manian.
Ma'am, I would say that, wherever there is a government hospital today, there should be a brain death committee in India, and it should be mandatory to monitor all the patients towards a certain amount of GCS, and it should be put out as a transparent mechanism of, organ donation across India. I think that's the way forward, because whenever we talk about organ donation, I think we must realize that there is a significant chunk of patients lying in the government settings, hospitals, which just gets under the radar and nobody notices, nobody bothers. I think that is where the start point will be for us. So every government hospital, wherever it is, should have a brain death committee in place so that declaration can happen. There should be confidence for declaration. I would say donate and save life. That's the best thing. That last message.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. And I'll take it forward to Anchal. I'll go back to Anchal, and I'll just go with the cliche of donate organs, save lives. Dr. Anchal, over to you.
Thank you all. Thank you all for such an important message to all the speakers to us for spreading the awareness about the World Organ Donation Day. I thank you all, and I'm signing off from here. Thank you for your valuable time and your insight expert. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.